Martin Luther King Jr. said famously in his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, he said, "I have the audacity to believe that one day people everywhere can afford 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits."
I grew up in the fields picking strawberries. What bothered me was the way that I was treated in the fields. And when I left the fields, I always told myself, I'm never going to treat people like that.
I like to think that we live in a meritocracy and that those who rise to the top have achieved their success out of hard work and determination and the right values. But the reality is that the vast majority of humans never get the chance to exercise their full capabilities because they are trapped in poverty.
The whole message that we're supposed to do in this world is support and help one another. You think about how do you interact with people on a day-to-day. It's the things that you purchase, it's the coffee you drink, it's the fashion you wear. It's where does it come from? And it's not just where does it come from which store. It comes from what level and what layering happened before it hit the final end result, before your purchase.
This is more about a people. It's not talking about earning. So employee can feel how they are being cared about. So when I see a company, they treat the employee not good enough, I have a rejection to deal with that company.
I don't think as human beings we're fully aware that, we are accountable for our own actions, and supporting people who are making us more aware is a way of moving forward and making the world a better place.
I think working with people with integrity, with honor, with dignity, people who have high values is extremely important.
I think there's many levels in this industry that you find those that just are not in it just for themselves, but really do care and want to make a difference.
When I think about social accountability, I think of metrics. A lot of people and organizations think that the best that they can do to help the world is to make a profit and then donate that to charity at the end of the day. I believe that the best way to change the world happens long before you think about donating to charity. It happens in how you make your decisions as a purchaser. If we really want to fix poverty at the root, we have to figure out how to create more living wage jobs for the world's poorest people. There are over 1 billion people who live in what we define as extreme poverty, so this is on less than about $1.50 a day. We have $12 trillion being spent annually by the top 2,000 companies in the world on goods and services. If we were able to get even 1% of that spend allocated to factories and vendors that have a social accountability approach, that are transparent in their labor practices, that pay living wages, that deliberately go out and hire people who are marginalized and invest a little bit more in training them, 1% of that $12 trillion could lift 40 million people out of poverty in a year.
My name is Wen Dingshan.
I am Leon Ping. We were both 16 years old when we came here for work.
We met 30 years ago in the factory. There wasn't any work on the farm back home, so we were forced to move to the city. Wages were low and we had long work hours. We had little opportunity to visit home. I was only able to call home once a month. I missed my parents so much at that time.
When we first met, we were comfortable because of our similar backgrounds. We fell in love and were married quickly. Soon I was pregnant with our daughter.
Since we were poor and needed to work, my wife returned home to her parents' farm to give birth to our daughter.
I left our daughter with my parents. We sent money home to help raise her. The farm was so far from the city, we were only able to see her once or twice a year. I really didn't have a chance to be her mother.
Each employee represents a whole family. So we have the responsibility to treat them fair and enable them have a good life. I have to be responsible to my employees, to my society, and to the environment.
Once they start earning living wages, they invest in better food. And just that impact alone can be dramatic. People make much better decisions when they're properly fed.
We now have a 9-year-old son that lives with us. We are able to raise him here in our home.
The pay is much better and our work hours are regular, so we have a family life here. I miss that we never had this with my daughter, but it was common then. Many of our friends had to do the same.
We live as a family now. It means so much to me that I can drive him to school each day, and we can spend most time away from work together as a family. It's so different now.
He doesn't understand what our life was like without his sister in our home. It's better for all of us.
And then longer term, we see investments in education and in healthcare. And this is where you see generational impacts of poverty reduction. If you see a generation of kids getting educated for the first time because their parents can now afford school fees, their children's children will have better health and life outcomes.
You know, human rights are so important to me. When I think about the companies that I represent, it's really critical to me that they do right by other humans as well. So the products that I represent stand for equal rights for other human beings, and the places that they're being manufactured and the people that are manufacturing have the same kind of rights that I have today. That's why I love Pivot Point, because they give other people the opportunities to live the life that I can.
So if I'm just one salon owner, what do stylists do? Stylists do how many clients a day? I gotta get to them. I gotta get them to understand, what does beauty mean to you?
There's one other root cause that I think links to so many problems, including poverty, which is the threat to our natural world.
I go to the basic need of, we need water. We can't live without water. Our bodies don't function without water.
Human population growth has basically threatened virtually every major species. We're in an era of serious threat to very precious natural resources, from aquifers to the seas to forests, which are preventing more and more carbon from entering the atmosphere.
It's all about connection, and it's about what is the whole entire circle of what's put us together in this world.
You come to industries and you come to products, and who's making the right choices in the water that we use, you know, and is it polluted, and is it chemical, isn't it affecting someone else's lives?
So much of the waste that's entering our water supply is actually coming from agriculture and from fields like fashion and I'm sure beauty, which have really polluting toxic chemicals that are being used to treat clothing or hair or what have you.
The process that the mannequins from Pivot Point go through, the cleansing, the chemicals that are used, at the end of it all, the process is kind of reversed and it goes through a purifying system.
Pivot Point is measuring the toxicity level of the water that's emerging from your treated hair process and really working to get that water to be as pure as possible before returning it to the environment is essential.
So the water is actually pure when it goes into the aquifer at the end of the processing. And I think that's a remarkable statement to be able to make.
Companies are responsible for so much of the spend and so much of the activity that is in some ways preserving the environment and in other cases destroying it.
You know, there's much more awareness now happening, and I think the more that we are aware of this, the better the world will be.
No company can be perfect at the outset, but I think it's about progress and making incremental steps each year to get better.
There's a little tag that actually comes with the Pivot Point mannequins, then tells you that the process that everything goes through on a human level as well as a universe is the very best it can be, the very best.
We are in an era where we have tremendous power to identify brands at a consumer level. Every second of every day, we are voting with our dollars. We tend to think that we vote only once or twice a year when we participate in an election and we go and cast our ballots, but we are casting our ballot every second with how we choose to spend our money.
I think, you know, the quality of a mannequin is really important.
They are a way to allow us to perfect our craft. They allow us to experiment. But in our educational methods, and I say methods because they are our education, and the mannequin allows us a wonderful head of hair to utilize all of these great techniques that the stylist can take back with them.
This is not an easy job and need a lot of patience and very skillful. Not just implant the hair, but the hair has to implant it with a certain requirement, certain direction, degree. And when we see the finished product by the hairstylist, I think it's very amazing.
I love these mannequins because the density is proper. I can take an iron to these and I can texture these things like crazy. I can put heat to them and I get great results.
We found using the Pivot Point mannequins through our career have been, you know, we've always had success, and you always want to set yourself up for success.
You see, this is an initiative to help those people out in those countries that are making these mannequins for us.
And I think the very thing that drew you and myself to this industry was to make a difference. It's very important to stand behind something where humanity is honored.
And that mark of approval also signifies pretty extensive research by third-party auditors to make sure that a company's practices are sustainable.
It's a huge responsibility for any manufacturer to make the right choices.
When you hear stories of how people are getting treated in different countries and how there are bodies that are really helping and making sure that really people are getting treated more equally.
And I believe that that is the biggest moral problem of our time.
Now, I know you're probably sitting there going, well, why can't we make them in the US? Hey, listen, what about this? Artists supporting artists, brands supporting brands, and people supporting people around the world, not just in the US. But those people, they have to make money too. So do me a favor, look for this tag. And when you see this tag, that's the mannequin you want to buy.
And I really feel like the values that we adhere to on nights and weekends, when we go to church, when we spend time with our families, when we volunteer at PTA meetings, those same values need to be present in how we operate from 9 to 5 in our workplace.
Pivot Point is on it. Do me a favor, get this message out there. Let's start supporting SA8000. Humans need to be treated properly.
I think it's really exciting that more and more companies are choosing suppliers that have that label. It's really about the leadership of those companies and what they decide to do that's going to determine what the world looks like in 50 years.
Being transparent, I think, is extremely important. It allows us to better ourselves and do the right thing.
As far as I know, there's only 3,000 corporations in the whole world have obtained the SA8000 certification. I'm so proud, to be one of them.
We're very fortunate to work in an industry where we touch people's lives each and every day. You get to see the results of that when you stand behind the chair. But what you don't necessarily get to see is the profound impact that you have on people's lives who manufacture educational hair products for you. We chose SA8000 because we wanted to make certain that our educational hair products were being produced ethically. There are a number of organizations that certify ethical manufacturing. My hope is that you would be mindful of what we have shared and request proof of certification from your suppliers. It's time to impact change around the manufacturing of educational hair products, and you have the power to do so. Thank you.